Hi, my name is Katja Windheim. I'm a clinical psychologist and I work in the NHS in Bromley with people who have more complex emotional problems. I'm also part of a small private practice, the Lighthouse Psychology Practice. I wanted to talk to you today about connecting with nature to help you through the current crisis. There are 3 parts to this series. In part 1, I will introduce some research findings about the benefits of connecting with nature. In part 2, I will help you to put things into practice by showing you how to do a mindful nature walk. And in part 3, I will guide you through a mindfulness practice called the mountain meditation, which you can do either outside or inside. We are all being impacted in some way or other by what is happening at the moment. It is threatening our health, our well-being, and our usual way of life. For some people, it might even threaten your livelihood and financial or physical security. It is probably triggering a whole range of intense emotions. You might feel trapped, anxious, isolated, sad, lonely, or frustrated. And these emotions might at times get overwhelming and feel hard to manage. They might partly be linked to your fight, flight, or freeze response, which is often triggered in response to threats. It leads to stress hormones being released to get the body ready to either fight or run away, which can lead to bodily tension and other symptoms such as restlessness, stomach problems, frequent urination, breathlessness, a fast heartbeat, clamminess, dizziness, and difficulty sleeping. And if intense emotions and bodily symptoms persist, they can start to impact on your overall sense of health and well-being, which is why it is important to find some ways of managing them. One way of managing intense emotions and bodily symptoms is by finding ways of connecting with nature. There are now over 1,000 studies demonstrating that being in nature, living near nature, or even viewing nature paintings and videos can improve physical health, emotional well-being, healing from illness, and social bonding. So, for example, the Wildlife Trust here in the UK has been doing a 30 Days Wild campaign for the last few years. They encourage people for the month of June to make an effort every day to engage in nature experiences. And over the last few years, over 40,000 people have taken part. And the Wildlife Trust studies found that a significant number of these had increases in psychological happiness and physical health that lasted over time. And other studies have confirmed that spending time in nature regularly seems to reduce the likelihood of cardiovascular disease, obesity, diabetes, and asthma, thereby also reducing the risk of premature mortality. It seems to also help brain performance. At the University of Michigan, researchers looked at memory and attention span after just an hour of interacting with nature. And they showed that these improved by 20% from before to after. And not only are people who are in touch with nature healthier mentally and physically, but nature also helps recovery from illness. A study looking at recovery from gallbladder surgery found that people with a natural view recovered faster, spent less time in hospital, needed fewer painkillers, and had less complications compared with those people who viewed an urban scene. Exposure to nature also seems to lead to people feeling more connected. In 2015, a study here in the UK found that spending time in nature regularly helped communities to feel more cohesive and lowered crime rates. And researchers at the University of Rochester found that people tended to seek closer relationship to others and were more generous with their money. So how does nature work its magic? There seem to be different ways. It seems that by being in nature, specific reward circuits are activated in the brain, which release dopamine, which in turn gives us a sense of purpose, joy, and energy to pursue our goals. It also seems to calm our nervous system and reduce the stress response. In other words, it switches the body into rest and digest mode, which is the opposite to the fight or flight mode. And when the body is in fight or flight mode, it shuts down everything that is non-essential in that particular moment, including the immune system, which is not really what we want at the moment. But when we feel safe, our body uses resources and makes long-term investments that lead to good health outcomes, such as growing, reproducing, and building the immune system. This has been backed up by EEG tests, which show more stable brain waves and an increased blood flow to the amygdala after spending time in nature. So the amygdala is a part of the brain that controls emotions and stress. This calming response also reduces blood pressure, heart rate, and muscle tensions. So when you're spending time out of doors, you're also often active. You might be walking, cycling, or doing some form of exercise, which will also help to counteract the stress response and have a positive effect on your body and mind. There also seems to be a more direct effect. Researchers in Japan found that chemicals released by plants and trees called phytoncides have antibacterial properties and directly boost natural killer cells in our immune system that help us to fight tumors and infections. And of course, this is especially important in current times. In fact, in Japan, spending time in nature has even become a formal part of preventative medicine that is widely practiced. They call this Shinrin-yoku, or forest bathing. It goes back to the 1980s, when the government began to notice negative effects of the technology boom on people living in cities. They started to talk about a nature deficit disorder in society, which seemed to impact negatively on people's health and well-being. In Japan, they're very aware of the calming, rejuvenating, and restorative benefits of nature that I just talked about, and they have centers across the country specializing in forest bathing, who offer organized tours based on your needs. They have guides and therapists helping you to fully immerse yourself in the experience. And there is an emphasis on breathing deeply and being mindfully present with your surroundings. This involves exploring them with all your senses, with curiosity and openness, to fully absorb the experience, which is then supposed to enhance the benefits. And I'm going to show you in part 2 how to get these positive effects. So, how much time do you need to spend in nature? A recent study at the University of Exeter found that people who spend 2 hours a week in green spaces, local parks, or other natural environments were more likely to report good health and psychological well-being than those who did not. 2 hours was a hard boundary. The study showed that there were no benefits for people who spent less time than that in nature. The 2 hours gave benefits either all at once or over several visits. And the effects were robust and cut across different occupations, ethnic groups, people from rich and poor areas, and people with chronic illnesses and disabilities. And where can you go? To get positive effects, you do not have to venture deeply into a forest or up a mountain range. You can go anywhere with a bit of green where you can see the sky and get a bit of fresh air. This could be your local park, your garden, I'm in my garden now, or even a balcony with a few plants. And please remember in these times to always follow formal government guidance, and this might change as we go along. If you do not have access to an outside space at the moment, remember that you can get some of the benefits even by viewing scenes of nature on a video, for example, or by listening to sounds of nature. And these are widely available on the internet. You can use the techniques I describe in the second part to deepen this experience. So, this is the end of part 1. I hope you found the information useful, and I hope to see you again in the next part for a mindful nature walk. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.